My wife left me for another man, and I was left broken, but her mother comforted me, and we ended up together. Now she came back begging, but I shut the door on her. When I was 20 years old, I never would have imagined that I would end up in the position I am in today. If someone had described to me the path I would travel, how I was going to meet my wife, the bond one forged with her mother, and the series of twists that would lead me to become a couple with the person I would have least expected, I would not have believed it. However, life is full of surprises, and sometimes reality surpasses any preconceived idea. I speak from the honesty of my experience, recounting point by point how I stumbled and found comfort in the most unexpected person. My name is Alan Robbins. I was born in the state of Michigan, in a peaceful environment. My childhood passed without major ups and downs, with parents who treated me well and a stable home. I grew up feeling that the world was a predictable place, where one would meet their partner, get married, have children, and grow old peacefully. At 25 years old, I met the one who would become my wife, Rachel. She came from a different family than mine. Her father had passed away in an accident when she was a child, and she was raised under the care of her mother, Priscilla, a woman who worked hard to raise her. From that family, I remember the immediate warmth with which they received me when I started dating Rachel. Although Priscilla was going through the grief of having lost her husband years ago, she showed no bitterness. On the contrary, she radiated an inner strength and a practical sense of life. Rachel was vibrant and spontaneous. When I met her, I was captivated by her contagious laugh and her willingness to try unconventional activities. We ran into each other at an art exhibition, where she was helping with the organization and I had attended out of curiosity. We started a conversation about the painting in front of us, a modern work full of chaotic brushstrokes. Without planning to, we stayed talking until the place closed. That initial spark led to multiple more or less informal dates, where I confirmed her enthusiasm for music, short trips, and gastronomy. It did not take us long to become a couple, and my family welcomed her with sincere affection. The same happened with her mother, Priscilla, who felt joy seeing her daughter find a responsible man. At that time, my relationship with Priscilla was forged in a very friendly manner. She affectionately called me the perfect son-in-law and made me feel that, after her husband's death, she had once again felt the warmth of family by having me close. Although Rachel and I were not yet married, Priscilla would invite us to her house on weekends. She would cook us typical dishes from her family tradition, and she often gave us advice on life as a couple. She said that one had to learn to cultivate patience and communication to avoid suffering in the future. I listened to her with respect, admiring her practical wisdom. A year and a half passed, and I decided to propose to Rachel. It was a simple event. I invited her to an intimate dinner at a restaurant she loved. I gave her a modest ring, and I knelt to ask the question. She shouted an effusive yes, hugging me with tears in her eyes. We shared it with our families and friends, and the next step was to organize a small wedding, without luxuries, but full of affection. On the day of the ceremony, Priscilla gave us a moving speech. She spoke of the importance of family, the value of honoring the memory of those who are no longer with us, and of never taking for granted the love one has. That night was etched in my memory as a moment of pure happiness. We began our married life with the illusion of those who believe they have found their forever partner. We rented an apartment in a quiet neighborhood. Rachel was dedicated to interior space decoration, while I worked in a medical supply business as an accountant. Everything was going smoothly. We were a team economically and emotionally. Sometimes we argued about domestic matters or future plans. I was more conservative, she was more adventurous, but nothing out of the ordinary. During that time, the relationship with my mother-in-law remained cordial and close. She lived about 15 minutes away by car, and we used to visit her. Priscilla became our accomplice when we needed home advice or extra support. She ate with us, came to watch football if I invited her, and we chatted about anecdotes that I did not always share with Rachel. For her part, Rachel got along wonderfully with my mother, so everything seemed like a perfect picture of harmony. But happiness sometimes mixes with hidden facets. When one feels that everything is secure, temptations or concerns arise. I began to notice that Rachel showed discontent with certain dynamics of our life. We had been married for almost 4 years when I observed her tired gaze. She told me she wanted to travel more, that she felt the day-to-day was very routine. I immersed in my work obligations and my savings plans to buy a house, did not understand her craving for adventure. Still, I tried to please her with weekend getaways or outings with friends, but something was not sitting right with her, a kind of dissatisfaction that I could not identify. Shortly before our 5th anniversary, Rachel began to frequent a group of very dynamic people she met in a painting workshop. At first, she told me about it with enthusiasm. They are very fun people. Sometimes we go out dancing. I saw no problem. I thought it was normal for her to have friendships and distractions. However, I noticed that these outings became more frequent and she would arrive later than usual. If I asked her, she would respond evasively. "Do not be so controlling. I am just having a little fun." On my side, I trusted her word, without suspecting an underlying story. When I happened to mention it to Priscilla, she reminded me that Rachel had always been a restless spirit, that she needed stimuli to feel alive. She advised me not to overwhelm her with unfounded jealousy. The truth is that, as the months went by, Rachel's attitude became hermetic. I noticed that her phone showed messages that she would not let me see. She made plans on the spur of the moment and did not invite me. It made me a little suspicious, but I did not want to make a drama out of it. My mindset was to believe that if you marry someone, you trust that person. It was a huge mistake not to pay attention to the signs. One morning, she called me from her work to tell me that she would stay over at a friend's house that night because they had an art project to finish. I agreed, with a tingle of uncertainty. I never would have guessed the outcome. A couple of days later, she returned home with a different look. She looked me in the eyes and, suddenly, dropped the bomb. "I am leaving, Alan. I am sick of this monotonous life. I met someone. I want to experience something new. Do not ask me for explanations. I am leaving." I think it took my brain a few seconds to process those words. I felt an emptiness in my chest, a chill. I wanted to scream at her that she was crazy, that she could not throw away our marriage for an impulse. I tried to hug her, but she pulled away and said that she had already decided. Overnight, Rachel packed clothes and suitcases and left, leaving me stunned. When I asked about her mother, she replied that she had already told her and that Priscilla would understand. I tried to call her on the phone, but Rachel did not answer. Just a brief message, "Take care, goodbye," was the last thing I heard from her. For weeks, I felt shattered. I was left with a ring, a half-empty apartment, and a heart in pieces. I could not explain how, suddenly, the woman with whom I thought I would build a stable future chose to run away with someone else. I spent days in the apartment, barely eating. My work was affected, but fortunately, my bosses showed empathy and gave me a few days off. The first person who came to my moral rescue was Priscilla, my mother-in-law. One day, while I was in the living room, shrouded in gloom, she knocked on the door and came in with a container of food she had prepared. She found me crying, devastated, with no strength to pretend to be strong. She sat next to me on the sofa and let me unload my pain. I told her what Rachel had said and how she disappeared with that man whom she did not even know well. Priscilla listened with moist eyes. I tried to ask her if Rachel had given her more details. Her response was that, indeed, her daughter had left with an individual she met in the art scene, with plans to move to another city, and that she did not want to worry about anything else. Priscilla confessed that she felt as bewildered as I did, and that she was trying to contact her daughter to make her reconsider. What surprised me most about that night of comfort was the tenderness with which Priscilla hugged me. I had never experienced such maternal affection from her. She held my head against her chest and told me she was sorry, that I did not deserve such treatment, that while she loved her daughter, she did not justify her running away. I could not express exactly the mix of emotions I felt, a relief at being understood and a shiver at discovering a closeness greater than usual. Her perfume was pleasant. Her hug comforted me. It was the first time I thought of Priscilla as something more than Rachel's mother, although I did not know how to interpret it at first. I told myself that it was simply a moment of vulnerability and sincere tenderness. Priscilla began to visit me frequently in the following weeks. She noticed that I was struggling to stay afloat emotionally. She would bring me food or sometimes help me clean up the mess my wife had left when she packed in a hurry. She tried to encourage me to go out, to walk, to clear my mind. Not with the intention of us becoming a couple, apparently, but with the genuine intention of supporting me. For me, she became an unexpected pillar, as my own family lived far away and my parents were already too old to travel. At the office, my colleagues encouraged me, but it was not the same. Priscilla knew me in depth. She knew what dishes I liked, what kind of movies entertained me. Sometimes, after my workdays, I would come back and find her car outside. I would go up, we would prepare some dinner, and we would chat about any topic that would distract me. It was comforting, yes, but also strange, because she was my mother-in-law and I did not know if it was right for us to be so close. The day I realized that something more was flowing between us was a Saturday afternoon. Priscilla and I had been talking for hours in the living room. The topic of Rachel came up again and again, and I tried to delve into the reason for her decision to leave. Priscilla told me that her daughter had always been unpredictable, that perhaps she was suffocating in a life she considered gray. While we were talking, she placed her hand on mine in a way that gave me a different kind of tingle than usual. I felt a slight warmth in my cheeks and looked away, somewhat uncomfortable. She also seemed tense, but she did not remove her hand. We remained like that, in a strange silence. Suddenly, her voice broke. "Forgive me. I do not want you to misunderstand. I am just trying to give you my support." I replied that there was no problem, but something had already moved in me. Remember, for more stories like this, subscribe, give it a like, and activate the bell. Let us continue. I held her touch, and we melted into a longer than normal hug. I could perceive her breathing becoming agitated. I felt, at the same time, guilt and a comforting warmth. What was I doing feeling this connection with the mother of my wife who had abandoned me? That night, I said goodbye to her at the door, unable to say anything about my mixed feelings. She got into her car and left with a confused look. I stayed in the living room, contemplating Rachel's absence and the increasingly noticeable presence of Priscilla in my life. The visits continued, and an atmosphere of complicity began to envelop us. Sometimes, we would find ourselves sitting on the sofa, our hands brushing, or she would offer to massage my shoulders when I complained of muscle tension. The line blurred completely the night when, crying, I told her that I felt an emptiness in my soul and that her company was the only thing that made me feel less alone. She hugged me, and, without planning it, our mouths found each other. It was a kiss full of trembling, cut short by the shock of what it meant. We pulled apart, stunned, in silence, not daring to look at each other much. A couple of seconds later, she murmured, "We should not. Something is not right." But she did not get up to leave, and I did not kick her out either. We stayed there, acknowledging with our gazes that a different bond was blooming. From then on, a secret romance was forged between Priscilla and me. It was not just a passionate release, but the emergence of genuine feelings. We were connected by the pain that Rachel had caused. Priscilla also felt betrayed as a mother. Her daughter had left without a second thought, and I had been left shattered. Between that closeness of two wounded hearts, tenderness was born. We began to speak to each other with an increasingly evident affection, and, yes, we had moments of cautious intimacy. We used euphemisms to not attract the attention of the neighbors, and we were extremely careful with our surroundings. We were terrified to think how the world would judge our bond, the mother of my wife and I, an abandoned man. No one would see it in a good light. The months passed, and the relationship solidified. Priscilla would stay at my apartment on Saturday nights, or sometimes she would invite me to her house. There were pictures of Rachel on the wall there, which produced a mixture of guilt and rage in us. We tried not to look at them. I learned to admire Priscilla in a different way, her energy, her ability to reinvent herself, her empathy with my suffering. She was not a woman much older than me. She was about 20 years older, but she looked young, with a vitality that surprised me. I realized that the time I spent with her made me forget the disappointment Rachel had caused me. There was complicity and respect between us. One day, while we were cooking in my kitchen, Priscilla received a call from her daughter, after months without contact. I could hear part of the conversation. Rachel was saying that things with the guy she had run away with were not going well, that he was unstable, with no intentions of formalizing, and that she was in a crisis. Priscilla, in an icy tone, replied that she could not solve her messes, that she should deal with them herself. She hung up abruptly. She looked at me with her eyes full of tears and confessed that she did not know how to deal with the resentment she had for her own daughter. I tried to calm her with a hug. However, the idea of Rachel showing up again unsettled me. And, indeed, shortly after, Rachel returned to the city. The news of her return reached me one afternoon when I was at my job. I received a message from a friend who saw her hanging around the neighborhood. I did not know what I felt, whether it was fear of confronting her or contained fury. When I got home, I found her waiting for me at the entrance with a small suitcase. Her face looked exhausted, as if she had aged suddenly. I wanted to demand explanations, but she looked at me with tears. She said that she had made a mistake, that the other man turned out to be a fraud, that she missed me. She begged me to forgive her and for us to get back together. I was speechless. My heart had already turned to Priscilla, and rage flooded me as I remembered the way Rachel had left me. Her words of regret sounded late to me. I asked her to leave, that I no longer wanted her in my apartment. She started to cry, begging for us to talk. Refusing, I told her to find a place, a hotel, wherever. I closed the door. Minutes later, I heard her car start. I thought that would be the end of her attempt to return, but I was mistaken. Rachel, stubborn, tried to contact me several more times. I ignored her. I even found out that she spoke with my family to get mediation, but my parents did not receive her. It was then that she decided to go to her mother. That reunion of mother and daughter happened at Priscilla's house. Rachel's supposed intention was to reconcile with her mother and ask for shelter. Priscilla told me that Rachel was crying and lamenting her mistake, that she needed a place to stay. Priscilla, with a hardened heart, was reluctant to take her in just like that. Still, she let her stay for a few days. What Rachel did not know was that Priscilla and I were in a relationship. Without foreseeing the consequences, one night when Rachel was not home, I went to see Priscilla. The next day, Rachel returned earlier than expected and found us in an undeniable situation. It was a chilling moment. Rachel entered the living room and saw us, me and her mother, holding hands, with gestures that left no room for doubt. She screamed in horror, asking what was happening, calling us sick and accusing us of an aberrant relationship. Priscilla responded firmly that if anyone had betrayed the family, it was Rachel, that she had left with another man and that in her absence, she could not blame us for finding mutual comfort. Rachel flew into a rage. She insulted us, shouted that we were a pair of unhinged people. I, suffocated, reminded her that she broke our marriage first, that she left me adrift. The situation exploded into a raw argument that ended with Rachel taking her suitcase and leaving the house. As she left, she threatened to make our lives impossible and to tell everyone that her mother and I were some kind of monsters. Despite the storm, Priscilla and I decided to face it and maintain our union. For me, Rachel had lost all legitimacy to judge me, since her act of leaving with another man destroyed the marriage before my bond with her mother appeared. The truth is that people would not see it that way. We knew there would be gossip and moral condemnations, but at that point, our affection was above the rumors. Without hesitation, I made the decision to start the divorce process with Rachel. She did not want to remain legally tied either, although she acted with rage and resentment. The legal battle dragged on with discussions about assets and accounts. We ended up with the division of the little we had and signed the separation papers. When we made it official, Rachel spat some hurtful phrases at me, saying that she would never forgive me the outrage of getting involved with her mother. On the other hand, Priscilla offered me sincere understanding, recalling that her daughter was the first to break the ties by running away with that stranger. She kept repeating that it was not our fault we had fallen in love afterwards, and, although at times I felt guilty, I could not suppress the love that had grown between us. Yes, it was unusual, the mother of my ex-wife and me, but in the end, life does not conform to preconceived schemes. While the divorce was in progress, Rachel left again. She temporarily stayed with friends and followed an uncertain path. I found out through comments that she was not doing well emotionally, that she was moving from place to place and not settling in any formal job. The last time I saw her, she gave me a look of hatred and mockery, claiming that my relationship with Priscilla would not last. I let her speak without replying. Priscilla and I did not need her validation. With the divorce finalized, I was able to rebuild my life without the weight of the failed marriage. I moved into Priscilla's house, which had space for both of us. We faced the comments of friends and neighbors. Some were scandalized, others gave us the benefit of the doubt, and the majority, to be honest, limited themselves to commenting in a low voice. But in the end, that was our decision. Priscilla and I found a peace that we did not expect. We started going out to public places without hiding, and if someone asked, we explained simply that Rachel had broken the marriage and that over time, her mother and I discovered an emotional bond. Everyone interpreted the story in their own way, but we no longer cared much about others' opinions. A couple of months later, we found out that Rachel, in a fit of rage, had rushed to slander us on social media, telling her biased version of how we had betrayed her. Again, we considered the option of ignoring those rumors, and that is what we did. Whoever wanted to believe her could do so. For my parents, it was a big shock, but I told them everything calmly, and, although they were surprised at first, they ended up showing me their support. My mother, with more open-mindedness than I would have expected, pointed out, "The important thing is that you finally found someone who appreciates you and does not abandon you." And indeed, Priscilla and I formed a more stable home than anyone would have predicted. After a while, Rachel and I completed the divorce process in court. She, at the last hearing, looked broken, without concrete plans. She limited herself to signing the papers with resignation and blurted out a "good luck with my mother. I hope you can stand her old age," in a sarcastic tone. I replied that I wished no harm to anyone. She left without looking back. That was the formal end of our marriage, and with it, I closed a cycle full of pain, betrayal, and unconventional decisions. Life with Priscilla flows with normality. We are both adults who support each other in the day-to-day. She is a few years older than me, but we share tastes, projects, and a philosophy of living without letting ourselves be tied down by what others will say. There will be those who judge it as unbelievable, scandalous, but that is our reality. Sometimes we look at old photos in which Rachel appears, and we are invaded by nostalgia for what could have been and was not. But at the same time, we confirm that we chose to be together out of love and mutual understanding, not out of a capricious whim. I have learned that there are no simple stories when it comes to human bonds. My ex-wife abandoned me in a fit of seeking excitement and ended up miserable, and I, who thought I was the absolute victim, found an unexpected connection with the mother of that same woman. Calling it a happy ending is perhaps an exaggeration, as we carry many scars, but we can say that we are two people who, after the pain, chose to support each other. It was not us who broke the marriage pact first. We were the result of a shipwreck that united us on the coast of loneliness. Thus concludes the anecdote, without further embellishments. Rachel left with another and failed. She came back repentant, but discovered my relationship with Priscilla. She called us crazy, she did not understand us, and we ended up staying with each other, while she was left adrift. I do not intend to present this as a model to be imitated. It is simply the testimony that in life there are unusual stories that defy conventional logic. Often, love blossoms in the least expected soil, and broken loyalty can lead to unsuspected paths. For me, the past closed with a divorce, and the present is built on a true affection with the woman I once only saw as my mother-in-law, and who is now my partner on a path that no one would have predicted.